and hit record. So thank you for being here. This is Time Effectiveness in Action. My name is Jerry Brem, and I work at the firm, The Executive Advisory. When I first joined this firm many years ago, we talked about, did this content really make sense in a firm that focuses in on communication? And it does, because when it comes down to some of the key elements of being effective with your time, it sometimes relies on having straightforward, sometimes even uncomfortable conversations around what's on your priority list, what you need to get done. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this and welcome you all. I'm glad that you are here. Let's go ahead and jump into the topic. So what we're going to talk about today are three different areas: purpose and priorities, which is really breaking it down to what's your focus; the idea of perspective and planning, which boils down to how do you execute on the things you hope to do; and then finally, procrastination or preparation. That idea of where does your juice come from and what makes the most sense for you in terms of how you apply your energy and when you apply that. So with that, I've got a question for you, and I'm going to be doing a poll in just a moment. So go ahead, and if you can get ready to respond, let me go ahead and click the poll open. There's three different questions here, and I want you just to give me your best experience in terms of what do you find to be the greatest obstacle in feeling effective with your time? Do you find it in setting priorities? Do you tend to find it in planning and accomplishing tasks? Or does it seem to be procrastination? And I can see by results, procrastination is way out ahead of all of its friends. So give it a couple of moments to get the rest of the folks a chance to click in. So again, what do you tend to find is your greatest obstacle? The idea of setting priorities, planning and accomplishing tasks, or procrastination. We'll just give it another moment or so. And I can tell you at this point, it is procrastination is strongly in the lead. So it looks like we may have everybody having responded. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. And just, that doesn't surprise me, because I think we get a lot of heat about procrastination. We get this sense of like, oh, somehow I failed because I didn't do something within a certain timeline. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more towards the end, because procrastination always goes at the end of a time management program. And I want to just give you a sense as we get there, as you think about the different tools I'm talking about for setting priorities and for executing on things, that preparation and planning piece, is that something you need to beef up so the procrastination feels more purposeful? And I know that's going to sound crazy, but there are times where mulling over an idea for a while actually isn't procrastination. It's the creative work you're doing before you execute. So we'll talk more about that. But let's go ahead and jump into how do we even get started? To have some focus is really understanding what's important to me. What do I value? Is it my work relationships? Is it my personal relationships? Is my top priority financial security, or my health, my mental health? All kinds of things are going to bubble up as your personal values, what's important to you. So knowing those helps you align the work you need to do when you need to do it, and can sometimes give us that little kick of, this might be boring, but it is aligned to me getting a paycheck. So I'm going to do this to make sure I don't get in the way of that particular value getting fed, if you will. The other one is, within your organization, do you even understand what their business drivers are? What are they trying to accomplish this quarter, this year? What is it that they're focused on? And then how do your values align to those? And the next level is, what are the goals? What are the actual things you're going to be doing or your team is doing to help meet those business drivers? If I have a sense of that, and they may be changing and I may need to revisit them monthly, if I've got a sense of that, it allows me to do the next piece, which is really be clear today, this month, this quarter, what are my top 5 priorities? What's burning up for me right now? What is it on my plate that could turn into a crisis if I don't take care of it? What are the kinds of things that need a bit of attention because there's downstream impact if I don't take care of them? So when you're watching this as the recorded version, you would pause this right now and just jot down the values, the business drivers, a couple of goals you know you have on your plate, and then ultimately, what are your top 5 things you know you need to accomplish? So with that, my process, when I have a sense of what my purpose is, what I'm supposed to be doing, I need a little bit of distance. I need a chance to sort of see, well, what's actually going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at the idea of how are we getting this stuff done? What is it that we need to be paying attention to in order to get the right work done at the right time? And my process is getting perspective. So I start with, at every month, I look at the next month I'm about to go into. And I'm sort of glancing back. What did I accomplish? What still needs to be done from last month? What's going to be on my plate this next month? And then the month after that. If I just have a visibility to what's behind me, where I'm at, and where I'm going, I have a sense that nothing's going to then surprise me. I do the same thing for the week I'm in. So this week, last week, I would have been looking at what's coming up. I'm paying attention to what's on my plate this week, and I'm paying attention to what's coming up next week. I don't, again, want any surprises. And then when it comes down to the day, what's changed since I last put my thoughts together as I closed out yesterday? What do I need to make sure I'm doing for today? And then how do I prep myself for tomorrow? This does not need to take 20 minutes. This could be literally a 2-minute exercise, because once you get in a pattern and a cadence of doing it, it becomes second nature to get that glance. Where am I going? Where does the roadmap say my journey is going to take me? And what do I need to have prepped so that I'm good to go when I get there? So the perspective of this allows me to then be more effective in my planning. I'm just going to touch on a couple of tools. Again, procrastination was the big ticket item in the poll, but I'm going to touch on this perspective in planning. And everybody has their own system. And I've been teaching time management since the mid-90s, all kinds of different programs. And when it started out, it was all about the planner you filled out. And then it became, well, people don't want to carry around a planner, so it became the system you used. Here's basically, it's not about the system, it's not about the planner. You can use a pen and a piece of paper, and you can be just as effective as the person who's got the latest technology. It is about how you are using that in a way that works for you. So I could sit next to somebody and they could have just one long list of things on a piece of paper. That's great. And I might be using all the bells and whistles within my system. That's great too. The ones that are the most common, it's the things that we need to be thinking about, is where am I? So whatever system you're using for calendar, where are you supposed to be? So as I'm glancing at the idea of what is it that I want to be paying attention to? What is it that I need to be somewhere? Do I need to give myself drive time now that we're back in a hybrid or return to office situation? What is the situation I need to be paying attention to in terms of, well, who's going to be with me? Who do I need to connect with this week? Who are the folks I need to be in conversation with? And ultimately, my planning is going around, what impact do I want to have? So somebody pointed out there is chat working in today's webinar. So if you have a chat question, you can use Q&A. You can also use the chat feature. I'm happy to track that as well. But when I ask these questions of myself, it allows me, again, to do a little bit of mental planning and do that quick hot second take on what's the weather. Do I need to be accounting for that if I'm going to be on a freeway or on a roadway that's going to be impacted by that? It's that idea of who's supposed to be in that meeting. Have I connected with them in advance? Am I prepped for what they're going to be asking me for? So when I've got this kind of work done, what we're really talking about, and this may sound familiar, this 2x2 that we're talking about is, it was Eisenhower's 2x2 planner for making sure he was focused on the right kinds of things. So it breaks down, and almost every time management program I've taught, regardless of the brand, uses a 2x2. There are things on your plate right now that are urgent and important. It is that burning item. It's the crisis-driven, deadline-driven kind of work that you need to do. It is urgent because we need to do it by a certain time, and it is important because it's having some kind of impact on yourself or on others. So this I just qualify as a must-do. Must be able to get this done. And then we've got this idea of things that are urgent. They're screaming at you, but they might not be as important. This might be a meeting that you go to where you sit and wonder, why am I here? I don't know how I'm going to add value to this. I'm not hearing anything that adds value to my job. It might be a certain report that you turn in. It might be certain kinds of work that you just do out of rote and basically habit, as opposed to having impact and meaning. So we want to mitigate that. How do we then influence our commitment to that work? Can we, again, communication, ask questions of people. Why do I need to be in that meeting? Is there something you're looking for from me? How is this report having impact? So I can potentially have a conversation about making sure I'm doing the right kind of work at the right time. There's also stuff that qualifies as maybe not urgent, but also not that important. So we want to minimize that. This is the one that if you hang out too long in the must-do, you are burning the candle at both ends. You get home and you're like, I'm just going to check out Instagram for a minute. And all of a sudden you realize you have been scrolling on Instagram for about 2.5 hours. Or, you know what, I'm going to watch a quick YouTube video just to de-stress. And you are there for hours upon hours. Or you're going to watch one episode and you end up binging 2 seasons. There is nothing wrong with any one of those activities, but done to excess, you get diminishing returns. So it's no longer an activity that recharges you. It's an activity that is sucking you down into a space of feeling bad about yourself. We need to minimize this. And the way to make that happen is we do the things that aren't urgent, but they are important. So what's on your list? It goes back to your values. What can you do to make sure you're focused on work that has impact? If I'm doing the things that matter in the big scheme of things, and they're not usually screaming at you, your personal relationships, most of the time, aren't screaming, hey, pay attention to me. We take them for granted and we go, yeah, I'll get there when I have a minute. So how do we reinvest time in the people that matter to us? They could be colleagues at work. How do we make sure we're investing time in those relationships at work? The work that you have to do that might require planning and preparation. The taking care of yourself, taking time to actually recreate and recharge, and taking a vacation as they come around as opposed to just pushing through. So this idea of what is it that's important to you, and are you literally carving out time and shifting things and focusing on the right things so that you have less in the crisis mode and more in the I'm doing the right work at the right time. So with that, the idea is that we can then plan effectively. So I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know that I've got tools available, as I said, that can help me. Everybody uses a wide variety of tools. And so these are going to look familiar. Just that idea of if I'm putting some things together, I've got an inbox. Most people I work with are on either Outlook or Gmail. So there are systems within there, and you can play with those to make sure you're staying on top of what's coming in at you. What is coming in through your email? I'd like you to consider that at some point a task list. Everything in there supposedly needs your attention. So how are you managing that task list? I chose to do something called inbox zero, and it is that idea of I have nothing in my inbox except what has come in during that day and what I'm actively working on. So this idea of being really clear, have I responded to everyone? If I want to respond within the same business day or within 24 hours, depending on the situation, I can quickly see what's hanging out there for me. Inbox zero is just my thing. It doesn't work for everybody. And by the way, I only use that for work. My Gmail is up to thousands upon thousands. But I don't get a lot of personal emails. So this idea of knowing what's coming in, and those are actually actions I might need to take, I need to then take care of my calendar. So here's the crazy thing. Now, I don't know about Gmail calendars, but I do know for Outlook. You can literally go in and change your default so that it opens in calendar and not email. And when I first heard this, my stomach flipped over, because that, to me, was the most distressing idea. What if I didn't see my emails first thing in the morning? And yet what happened when I put it into effect was I had that chance to say, oh, where am I supposed to be today? What did I think were my priorities? What did I think I needed to get done? And I have that now as a framework when I then go to open my emails and people are now asking things of me. I get to reprioritize or put those in order based on how they can get done. So the calendar, and I've got a quick picture for you. This is just mine. This is how I live. I color code, I time block. There are things where I chunk it out. If it's not scheduled, it probably won't happen. But I can quickly glance at that, and again, based on the colors, know exactly what I'm doing this week. So finding your own system with whatever calendar you use that just helps you get that glance when you're in a week, where am I? What am I doing? Allows you to then respond to emails more effectively. I had a lot of things I had on my plate for this week, but I know that I am going to be back-to-back in meetings. And what's not on here from when I originally set this up is I now have meetings after each Tuesday and Wednesday events. So I'm going to be basically going from 8 o'clock in the morning until after 8 o'clock at night. So I have to factor that in when it's time for me to put a proposal together or make sure I'm answering emails in a timely way. So let's get to that one that most people said was their biggest issue, procrastination. And these are the reasons, the top 3 reasons why most people say that they are procrastinating. It's too big, it's too scary, it's actually just too boring. So when it is those kinds of things, there's ways that you can break that down. But I'm going to go back to that idea. What if procrastination was actually you preparing? And there are some fabulous TED Talks out there or other kinds of videos about procrastination. And I'm going to encourage you to look for the ones that speak to creativity. Creative minds, people who are really trying to break the mold of how we've always done things, tend to be seen as procrastinators. They tend to sort of get a little, oh, this is the thing I want to work on. And then there's this pause where you don't see any activity. And then whoosh, a big activity of, here's a lot of work I'm going to do. Sometimes that works out just fine. It works out just fine if you really were using that time to think about the project, to ideate on it, to consider all the possibilities, to see what would happen if we break the rules. So if that is you, if you say, well, you know, I work in a really creative space and I seem to be more empowered when I've got a limited time zone or time frame to work within, then play with that a little bit. Just go ahead and lean into that. Maybe give yourself a little bit more of a buffer of when you dive in. But go ahead and think about, what if this was relabeled as preparation and creative time as opposed to procrastination? When it comes to something that you are procrastinating because it's too big, scary, or boring, then there's things you can do. And the things that you can do are really, first of all, break it down into smaller tasks. If it's too big, lock it into a task and make a list. This is that idea of, I've got this big, hairy thing, and it's hard to start it. It's hard to just know where the first step should be. So the tiniest first step you can take is actually helping your brain rewire and go, oh, this is doable. I can do this. I can do this one thing. It's like not figuring a workout plan that is, I've got all 6 months of my workout plan locked in, but I don't know where to begin. It's, well, you get up off the couch. That's the first step of your workout plan. The next one would be schedule and prep, the execution. So really putting it on your calendar as, this is something that I can do. This is something that I can set into small bite-sized pieces and schedule time to actually put some energy around it. If it is complicated or complex, maybe even a little boring, you can ask for help. If something's boring to you, it might actually be interesting to somebody else. So getting their perspective on the value it adds and the interest it might have for them helps you then put a different energy around the work. And last, but most importantly, you need to align it to your priorities. If there's something that you are putting off, to step back and say, how does this impact the work I'm doing? How does this impact my peers? If I don't do this, or if I'm late, does somebody else get hurt in terms of their ability to do their job? How does this feed my ultimate goals? It's this idea of, I need to care about the work I do, even if it's mundane maintenance work. I need to care about why that matters. And sometimes our most basic maintenance work is what keeps the lights on. It's what keeps us being able to move forward. It's reminding us to fill our car up with gas. It's the basics. And if I tie it to, I want to be somewhere on time, then I'm going to get my car filled up the night before, is one of those ways that you take care of the boring stuff. With that, I'm going to kick into some time management myths. And the first one is, and I'm sorry if you love chaos, there is a belief that chaos equals creativity, and it doesn't. There's actually a lot of research that shows that is one of the most dangerous myths that we have. So if I think that I can always push it to the last minute, that I can just ignore whatever my deadlines are, and I want to work in that moment of chaos, sometimes what that also means is we're not getting enough sleep. We are a person who's living on the edge in all areas. If we are not getting enough sleep, it's basically like we are showing up and we are past the legal limit for driving drunk. That idea of if I am a little bit anxious about this work, I am also triggering cortisol right into my system. So my adrenaline's going up in all the wrong ways. So I'm eating away at my health while I'm trying to live this creative, chaotic life. That means we sometimes get that mindset of, well, I'm the exception to the rule. I got A's on all my papers, and I did them the night before. And I would say, congratulations to you, if that's the case. Typically, that meant you were only responsible for your report to turn in, so the consequences were, in some ways, just on you if it didn't work out. When you are leaving it to the last minute in the workplace, there are probably other people who are waiting on information from you or who are at the mercy of your timeline. So being that exception to the rule, again, means you might be eating away at your own decision-making abilities, your creative abilities. There is the mental fatigue that comes with both the chaos and sort of assuming you don't need the same level of sleep or focus that others do. And so to get to focus, there is the mythology of multitasking works. And there is just tons of research that shows if you have high focused topics or issues or situations that you are working through, what you're doing is not multitasking. You are jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing very, very quickly. At some point, that energy is spread so thin it all dims. So again, your cognitive decision-making drops. Your ability to handle stress or navigate frustration drops. It also means that I might not be giving my full functioning cognitive self to something that really needs it, and I'm sliding into a space of just enough will do. So close tabs. We are in a world where you do not need a notification that somebody has sent you an email. You need 0 dings in your life. If you are waiting for a significant email to come through or a phone call to come through, sure. For that time period, turn on your ringer. But there are very few of us that will forget to check email, will forget to check Slack, will forget to check whatever the tool is. So let's just eliminate some of the sound clutter and visual clutter we have showing up on our screen. That also means maybe closing out some tabs if you're not working on it. Now, this is one of those where I'll give you best practice, and you might go, you know, I love to get in the zone, and I work for a good 2 hours in the zone. Fantastic. Stick with that. There's neurological research that shows most of us tend to be in cycles of about 20 minutes. So give it a good 20 minutes, set a timer, and then if you like variety, jump to something new and start over. But it is that idea of you being purposeful about it in terms of the choices you're making and where you expend your energy and where you want to focus. And I would highly recommend you jump out for a moment to actually breathe and recharge and take a walk throughout. Somebody just call out, Windows has a feature called Focus Assist. Absolutely. So using those kinds of tools to help you stay in the zone. All right. With that, I'm going to go back to that communication piece because this is the idea that we really want to make sure we are helping ourselves and we're helping other people know what our priorities are. So I can't tell somebody I don't have time to work on that if I can't be clear about what my priorities are. So if I know them first and somebody wants to delegate to me, delegate up, delegate to the side, dump, whatever the word is you want to choose, if they want to throw work my way, I have to be able to say, I'd love to take that on. And I also want to let you know that I've got these other priorities that, you know, these are their timelines. So this is how that's going to fit into that. Or if it's coming from your manager, you don't have that option, you can at least say, hey, I'm working on this. Which of these would you like to have me hold in order to get this done in time? You just sound more in control of your workload when you have those kinds of conversations. There's also the idea that everyone participates. So while we might be returned to office, sometimes it's hot desks, and we've got to work with everyone about an open plan seating. We've got to work with everyone about the noise levels, or when am I going to have access to the space where I can have a private conversation, those little conference rooms, or maybe I'm still working in a hybrid space from home. I need to have those conversations with whoever is in that space. Are we all on Wi-Fi at the same time, which is actually eating away at the speed, and I keep dropping off my video conferencing tool? So having a conversation with folks about what are our priorities, where do we need to be, what kind of impact are we supposed to be having that day? And then somebody had mentioned about being able to get a lot done without the constant chat notifications and texts, et cetera. So absolutely. And part of that, when we pay attention to those things, is being able to protect our prime time. What's your prime time? Years ago, I worked with somebody, he was in the video game space, and he said his prime time was literally 2 a.m. So he had a conversation with his manager. Could he come in later in the day, and then he'd work, and then he'd go home, and he'd do a little rash of work at 2 a.m. It's this idea of when are you at your best? Mine's not 2 a.m. Mine tends to be I'm a more early morning person, and then I tend to have a little whoosh right before 5 o'clock. I have another little boost of I want to get a bunch of stuff done, probably to close out my day. Knowing what that prime time is means I want a calendar around that, or I want to let people who tend to drop into my office or tend to reach out to me that might not be a great time to set a meeting. Again, we want to ask for help if we feel like we are struggling. Maybe somebody on your team or somebody that you know seems really organized. Do they have any hot tips for you? Go ahead and take it. They might not work for you, but give it a shot. The idea of saying yes and the idea of saying no. Know what you are agreeing to and know what you are declining. There is a consequence to both. You can be the person who always steps up and I'll take it on, I'll do it. That's great. At what cost? Is something else getting shoved to the side like what you need for you? Are your values still being met? And then saying no has a cost because you're really taking care of your values, but the people on your team aren't seeing a team player. So this idea of walking that tightrope. So with the time, we've just got a couple more minutes left. I want to just call out that when things are truly, truly overwhelming, I'm going to encourage you just to stop and say, okay, by the end of today, when I shut everything down, what are the top 3 things that have to be done? And if I can just focus on those 3 things and know that there will still be work tomorrow, I will have this list there. It's not going to go away. I can then focus on that and at least close things down and get enough sleep to be able to attack the next day. That's what I've got for you for time effectiveness. They're just hot tips. Obviously, I could have talked for about 8 hours on all of them. So I'm going to encourage you to actually check us out on theexecutiveadvisory.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Instagram. And we've got a webinar on effective feedback. And I'm going to just pick up my notes to make sure I get it right. It is March 27th. And Heather MacArthur is going to be doing a workshop facilitating a productive feedback dialogue on March 27th. And I think that one is at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So make sure to sign up for that. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Great to see the names in the chat. Fantastic. Thanks so much.